Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another edition of the Clinic Growth Secret Show. This is Jeff Van Camp, and today bringing you another edition. I'm excited to have you. If you guys remember, this is the show where we teach you how to get more new patients, make more profit per patient, and keep the patients as long as possible. We do have another wicked guest on the show today. This man is actually a wizard in the systems and business space within chiropractic. And so before we get into all of the knowledge you're going to have here today, just a quick reminder that if you're new to the show, we do have a fee. And the fee is very simple, is that if you get value, if we make you laugh, we make you cry, we make you think, we make you really level up your practice game, we ask you to hit that share button and share it with somebody in your family, your colleagues, your friends that may also get some value from the show. We don't pay for advertising. We don't ask for Venmo. We don't ask for checks. If you do want to mail that, I can give you an address, but we don't ask for it. Okay. So if you get value, hit that share button, send it to somebody who's also gets some value, because today's going to be a good one. In fact, we're thrilled to welcome Dr. John Lee, founder and lead coach of Alpha Omega Consulting, to the show. Dr. Lee, how are you?
Great. Thanks, for having me.
Of course, sir. We're excited to have you. Now, Dr. John, his journey is a testament to the perseverance and power of mentorship. In fact, he had some early struggles as a chiropractor and eventually turned it into a flourishing practice. In fact, he's seeing over 200 people a week right now, with a case value that's allowing him to collect over 7 figures annually, only on 200 visits a week. And so we're going to talk about how he's been able to do that today, in the many different tools he's using inside of his practice to not only run a successful clinic, but also the successful coaching business on the side as well. So Dr. John, we're excited to have you, sir. I think we should start the show, since you have done most things. You talk about a lot in your work. You might have a small practice, but you want to think about your business as a Fortune 500 company, right? So how can docs start to flip the mindset? They're like, hey man, I'm only doing $120,000 a year. I'm not Fortune 500. What do they need to do to start flipping that mindset?
Sure. So if we follow the examples of those, mega successful businesses like Amazon and Apple, the Fortune 500 or Fortune 100 companies, they have kind of a blueprint, and you can actually take that blueprint, which is what I've done with my coaching program, and scale it down so that a small business, which is basically what a chiropractic office is, you can actually use that same kind of model in your small business. So a lot of chiropractors think that's not possible, but it's very possible. I learned how to do it years ago, and that's what allowed us to be even more systematic and streamlined with our day-to-day operations. So it's things like looking at your practice, not just like a practice where you show up and see patients, but actually seeing it and setting it up like a true business. And so things like the right departments, there's usually 4 or 5 critical departments you need within your business. Just to name a few, like marketing, operations, sales and service, accounting, finance. Even if it's just you and one assistant, just 2 people, even if it's just you solo, you can and should have these departments identified in your practice. And there's more. There's things like meeting types, not just weekly staff meetings, but actually bigger meetings like quarterly meetings, doing something that we call a SWOT analysis, which is definitely a Fortune 500 company type of strategy and technique, and hiring process training. I mean, the list goes on and on, but all the things we did not get in school that I learned from mentors and consultants next that I hired and learned from over my 22-year career.
You'd mentioned one thing there that I think is important to define for those that are possibly new to the analysis of the SWOT analysis you'd mentioned. Can we define that and possibly maybe its importance inside of a practice?
Sure. Yeah. And again, I can't take credit for this. I mean, this is around for, probably a century or more. But the SWOT analysis, it's not like SWAT team, like police or anything, but it's SWOT, where the S stands for strengths of the business, W equals weaknesses of the business, O equals opportunities, and T equals threats. So what you do is you get together with your team. Again, if it's just you and one's a CA, just the 2 of you. If you got a team of 5 to 7, the whole team. But you typically conduct this over a long 3 to 4 hour meeting, which is almost essentially like a big board meeting that these big companies run at Amazon, which is like, all the C level, CEO, CFO, all those people get together and they have these long board meetings. And when you get together with your team and collectively discuss these, again, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, it gives you a lot of clarity on what's good and what's bad and what can be improved within your business. And then you set tangible projects out of these analysis.
You recommend to docs what would be the cadence that would be appropriate? You talking maybe possibly once a year, once every 6 months, somewhere
Uh,
within that annual to semi-annual type?
yeah, for the SWOT analysis, once a year, typically January, the first big meeting of the year.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
a interesting thing. That I don't know for the seasoned listeners, that's one thing I don't think we talked a lot about is the SWOT analysis, and that's just a good chance to kind of get a bird's eye view on the whole visibility of the business. You know, where are we kind of weak? What are some of our risks? Where are we strong, and where should we push harder at? Kind of deal. Well said. And you had mentioned one of the important things that I think that we have been recently discussing is onboarding team, bringing people up. And so you had mentioned a 90-day training protocol for a new teammate. What does that look like and entail? Because I think there's a lot of listeners who they have challenges in their business, and then they bring somebody in and just to fill that hole, and they don't necessarily have the systems. That person they hire, that person builds the systems, but then the crazy thing is when that person leaves, they take the systems with them, right? So
Correct.
is that essentially like how you bring somebody up to speed on the current systems? Can we walk through that?
Sure. So one of the biggest pain points of chiropractic business owners is if they have to hire somebody who's going to do the training and all the time and energy that it takes to do the training. So obviously, again, if you've got no CAs, then that first CA, you're going to do the training. But then once that CA is there and is proficient and knowledgeable in your systems, that CA then can train the next CA following a very simple 90-day training checklist. And so this is just simply a 2-page Word document of all the things that you do in your business, all the processes. So things like how to schedule a new patient, how to do a new patient phone call, how to check in patients, how to collect payments. Again, there's like typically 2 pages of this, but you want to prioritize all the most important stuff to the top, the things that they need to know to get going to help with your day-to-day, patient flow, and then all the least important stuff towards the bottom of page two. But if you have a 3-month approach, and this has to be a realistic, check. It can't be like 10 pages, but 2 pages of the most essential things that they need to be trained to become proficient at their job. And I do mean proficient. We're not going to have an expert in 3 months. That comes within the next year or two. But if they can at least know the basics of those tasks in 90 days, now you've got someone who's been onboarded and trained properly, and then also empowers them. It makes them feel accomplished, right? Because the worst thing for a new hire is if the hiring the training process is all over the place, it's just sporadic, random. There's no rhyme or reason. Those people get frustrated and sometimes actually don't even stay very long. They quit before 90 days. But if you have a very organized manner of that initial 90 days, you have a high success rate of that person's retention.
Well said. And so a lot of things that I hear is people concerned with the marketplace today, such as like, people just don't want to work. It's hard to find talent. What have you found as far as like a culture shift from maybe the workforce from 15, 20 years ago to today in terms of how to keep employees happy inside of the business? Is it all surrounding what they get paid, or is there other things that are important?
So I do agree to some level of that statement of yes, or that feeling. The hiring pool is a little bit different, right? So we experience that too, but you don't need to pay, double what you paid in the past. I think pay structures are very similar to what they were before.
Mhm.
And honestly, if your entry level pay is on par with the local fast food places, then honestly, you're okay. What actually gives them the feeling of wanting to stay with you for a long time is always giving them opportunity for growth. So if they feel like they're at a dead end job and they can never advance up the ladder within your organization, then they're typically going to have maybe a 2, 3 year window with you, and they're going to look for something else that's more satisfying. But for example, in my office, I've got one manager. She's a co-manager. She's been with me 14 years, and she started at the very basic entry level position. And because I provided her growth, she stayed with me for 14 years, and now she's one of our managers. So as long as you provide that growth, then they see that they're not stuck in just one place.
Well said. I want to transition to attracting some new patients here too, because I know that's one of your guys' strengths as far as inside of your consulting communities and that stuff. Um, Marketplaces are forever changing, and we have these different markets that are maybe some would call very saturated with chiropractors and other clinicians and that kind of stuff, and then some that are not so saturated. What are some ways that I feel like if somebody's like, hey, I live in Houston, saturated marketplace. What are some things that people can do online, digitally, or even internal to ultimately stand out in a competitive marketplace? Like, how do they really make themselves known from your experience?
Sure. And I have a lot of relevant experience with this because where I'm in practice, Irvine, California, which is in Orange County, Southern California, is one of the most saturated places for chiropractic. You know, we've got Newport Beach next to us. We've got Santa Ana. So extremely saturated. What I would say to that, I don't want to oversimplify it, but if you if you dominate your market as far as online reviews, and I'm talking about Google reviews, and if Yelp is prominent in your both Yelp reviews, that is one of the best ways to actually stand apart from your crowd. That also has to be backed by amazing service and quality of care to patients. So you can't just give subpar care and not be a great doctor, not care about your patients and ask for reviews because those patients will not give you 5-star reviews. So it starts with the service, but as long as you've got that dialed in, it's really having a systematic approach to acquiring reviews and having what I call a rate of review acquisition, right? Because in my program, there's systems for just about everything. You don't want to just say, "Hey team, let's ask for reviews," right? "Hey, let's go for 50 reviews this month. Let's get at it," right? There's systems on there's ways you can do this, right? An actual with tact in class where you're not asking the same person 3 times in a row. But if you do this right, and I don't think we have time to go over that in this training program, or this podcast, but if you have a system for the review acquisition, then in a decent amount of time, you'll actually be number 1 or 2 in your town for reviews.
That's beautiful. So you're saying, just to be clear, that you have a system that's followed in the office and probably through some automations with following up with patients to actually systematically get people to give you reviews based on where they're at inside of the relationship and inside of the journey.
Correct. Yeah. And I'll just give a little teaser, a little giveaway, a QR code, something as simple as a QR code in your office.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because honestly, the doctor asking for reviews is always the best. They're going to be most compliant to the doctor giving them the care. Yes, you can have some superstar CAs that are very good at review acquisition, but I think the doctors have the most, the highest compliance. And then if you use a QR code, okay, you ask for a review and then say, "Hey, thank you. You do it. Awesome. Hey, if you don't mind, just point your phone to this QR code and you have that QR code link right to your Google business profile or your Yelp profile."
That's awesome. Would you? I don't know if you've ever done this, and there's obviously different ways for people listening. There's things you have to consider with this next question, but it's like, have you ever found a way to compensate or provide commission or some sort of incentive for reviews, or is it all just based on the number of asks and that kind of stuff?
So yes, and there's a lot of debate about this, and some say you should not incentivize or
Yep,
give
that's
a
why I
reward.
want to give a little the disclaimer for sure. Yes,
Yeah,
sir. Yep.
yeah. So check with your state. If there's rules against this, I'm not saying to break the laws, but yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with incentivizing for a positive review. Again, if you provide the service and say they're done with a few months of corrective care and they're super happy with what you've delivered, why not ask for a review? But you're only going to get, I would say, 50% compliance on the review if you just ask. If you incentivize with something, okay, and I won't get into details of that, that's going to be up to you, but a gift card or a free service or something free in the office, then the chance of them actually doing the review, the percentages go way up.
Way up for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, again, the disclaimer is important there. Obviously, check your rules but if the rules are okay, I think reviews, and then we highly encourage all of our listeners and docs in our program to get video testimonials of patients too, just as many as possible. Stack them up, photos, testimonials to put on the wall, that kind of stuff. I feel like you just can never have too many in today's marketplace.
Right. Mm-hmm.
On the topic of marketing, there is internal, external. I want to first define the difference. Well, for obviously external, we're talking like, going out to events, that kind of stuff. And then internal, I think a lot of people think more about systematic external. So going out to events and setting up those. What are some systematic ways you've maybe found for internal patient acquisition?
For internal, which is asking your patients to refer new patients that they think would need our care, you can get systematic with that as well. So in my clinic, we typically average between 10 to 15 new patient referrals a month, and we get overall about 45 to 50 new patients total a month. with about 30, 35 coming from the internet, Google and Yelp, and some Facebook. But a good 10 to 15 just come from patients organically telling other patients. And it's not by chance. It's because our team knows when and how to ask for referrals. We train on it. We actually have a script. We call it a friends and family referral script. We pass out friends and family referral cards for a discounted new patient evaluation for their friends and family. We put an expiration date on it about 3 weeks out. And we just kind of wait until the opportunities arise. And those opportunities will arise, again, if you're providing good service. But even with patients who are a little bit quiet, right? If after a few months of care, or maybe they're in maintenance care, and you know darn well that they're happy, you can ask them, right? And there's certain scripting that you can ask them in a very classy way, to ask them for the review where it's not pushy or too forceful on them. So if you have that kind of training and the whole team is really comfortable talking about referrals, that's going to keep your referrals up, hopefully in the double digits.
That's great. 10 to 15 just off that. Would that be, is 10 to 15? That's probably not quite enough for your volume to sustain almost off that alone. You know what I mean? That's awesome, man. So you got some internal going, and then external. Most of your emphasis, you put some emphasis obviously on Google and reviews and that kind of stuff. How do you feel about doing events nowadays? Is that something that you still get value from? Is that something that you guys like do, or like, what is your thoughts on that?
I think there's still a ton of value. I have a lot of clients of mine that still do spinal screenings and lunch talk events. We haven't had to do it for a while now because our internet presence and referrals just was definitely enough. But for many, many years, I did screenings and events and talks. And so I don't think that's dead. I think face-to-face interaction of marketing still works because you see it in different industries still all the time. You'll see fitness gyms, mobile cell phone companies doing this at different venues. And I think it still works for chiropractic. I think if you can talk to someone over a 10, 15-minute conversation and your screening process is down pat, which I also train and teach, then you'll get new patients. Also, if you're very effective at public speaking and you can provide those lunch talks and teach people, health topics, those typically will get big numbers in new patient signups as well. So I don't think those things are dead at all. It can definitely complement. Yes, it's a lot more work. And nowadays with the internet, I'm seeing more and more chiropractors don't want to do that old school technique. But if you're to ask me, does it still work? It definitely still works.
100%. You just got to be willing to put yourself out there. What do you,
Yeah.
what about the comparison between webinars and in-person stuff? You ever tested any health webinars and chiropractic webinars? Is that something that works for docs?
I haven't done it for my practice. I've done it for my coaching business. And
Yeah.
it
Okay.
works. Yeah, it works for all kinds of online coaches. I think it can work for chiropractors searching for patients in their community if they knew how to do it right, or if they had someone that knew how to do it right.
How to execute it for sure. Yep,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah, I told at the top of the show, you make sure remember to pay the fee. It was a hyper tactical episode today with Dr. John in terms of actionable things you guys can take away right now, added to your clinic, and start seeing more referrals, more new patients, getting those reviews up. Doc, you've got we were talking before the show. You've got a family of 4 children, 12, 10,
Yeah.
5, and 4. And
Yes, sir.
so your reminder, this gentleman here, he's running 200 people a week in the clinic with an associate and other staff, and he's got his own coaching program with a lot of different chiropractors inside, and he's raising a family. I mean, how do you manage the work life? I mean, do you have like a set like time block you're doing business, set times that are only for family? Are you batching things? What's going on to maintain all the chaos?
Great question. Yes, a lot of people think I'm crazy, but you have to understand, I'm only in my chiropractic practice 3 mornings a week,
Mhm.
Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 8 to 12:30. And so it's a half day, 3 times, and I don't go at all Tuesday or Friday. And so my physical commitment to my chiropractic practice is only, so many hours. And then for my coaching business, I do that on Tuesday mornings and Friday mornings. And I do really try hard to keep my afternoons free for my family. And
Yeah.
so about 6 years ago, I made a conscious decision and a business model change. And so prior to this 3 mornings a week at the practice, I was working full days, about 4.5 days a week and putting in 10, 12-hour days. And I was a slave to my practice. And I realized, and then that's when I had my two daughters. I had two kids, and I was missing out on quite a bit with their life. And so I made a decision that I wasn't going to keep doing that, that my business was doing well enough that I could restructure my business model and work less, bring in a seasoned associate doctor to really take care of the afternoons and free up my times. And it's worked really, really well. But it is because of all the years of me investing in other types of consultants and mentors to teach me how to set up my business to the point where I could actually be gone most of the time and the practice still do very well.
To make that big move, obviously the first thing was the conscious decision. The second thing was the associate the big thing that needed to change for you?
It sure was. Yeah. Because prior to that, I was the typical practice that would hire young associates,
Hmm.
maybe 5 years out of school or less. You could pay them less, they'll do anything that you ask them to do. Only problem is they're just, okay chiropractors because they just don't have experience yet. So when I made this decision about 6 years ago, I decided to reach out to a colleague of mine who's a friend in chiropractic. We graduated the same year. So he and I are both right now 22 years out of school and practice. So he's the one that I actually reached out to. And there was another gentleman that had been practiced over 10 years and kind of between the two, but my colleague, my friend is the one that had the most qualifications. And having someone that seasoned and experienced and us having also very similar training and background, it was the key.
Massive. Able to shortcut yourself a lot of time by just bringing somebody in with that experience too.
Right.
In terms of your requirements to bring them up to the level of capabilities you need them at,
Hmm.
that's one thing. It's either you pay prices in certain regards when it comes to the hiring process. Either going to pay for someone who's really experienced and good, or you're going to pay in time to help bring somebody up to become the next hitter. And I think at that stage, that was a smart move for you, for sure.
Yeah, it literally took like 3 months of training him, and then he was off and running.
Off to the races,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think a lot of that is a testament to your business model there. You'd mentioned the business model a couple different times throughout, this conversation and just now. It's interesting because you had mentioned, 200 people a week, north of seven figures in collections. Obviously, I've spoken with, and there might be even people listening that are seeing 150 to maybe even 200 people a week that are doing a half of that collections.
Hmm.
What have you been able to really incorporate? What levers have you been able to pull inside of your practice to really increase case values, to be able to have that kind of collections at, not a massive, massive, massive volume?
Sure, great question. So the reason why we're able to have such a high monthly gross and yearly gross is because of our services offering. So, I mean, we are definitely, traditional chiropractic philosophy. We believe in the nervous system and subluxations and all that, and we're manual adjusters. We take X-rays, but because we offer spinal decompression therapy, clash for laser therapy, and shockwave therapy, and specifically focus shockwave is what we offer. It allows us to have treatment plans and care plans and case values that are higher than your typical traditional chiropractic plan, and in a very legitimate way where these patients qualify for these services. It's not like we're just shoving it down their throat because we want to make money. Is we're only going to put it in their care plan if their condition and their situation actually warrants it. So again, our case fees are higher. They're not out of this world. They're still, we're getting prepays mostly for 3 month care plans, but this is what allows us to have, 80 to $100,000 months, month after month, with just seeing 200, adjustments a week, because our therapy CAs are very busy doing the decompression setups, doing the shock waves, doing the laser. And the doctors, we don't do any of that. We actually just do the adjusting, and we monitor and guide those therapies.
Absolutely. That's tremendous. So, but you found a lot of success by keeping the core of the principled, largely cash-based model, subluxation-based manual adjusting, but we've been able to kind of increment and add on services that have added, case values going from 2,000 and now it's 3,500. And just by doing that, we're able to deliver more value, but also uh, be able to maintain quality of care because it's all recommendations.
Yeah, and then I mean case values that go up towards 3,800, 4,500, and 4,700.
Mhm. Yeah, that's awesome. No, I think that's huge. And one thing too, you mentioned 90 days. We talk a lot about 90-day programs too. I think what happens when we're creating a business model, a lot of people get stuck and they want the practice to be sticky, and so they start off by doing maybe like a 12-month program with patients. And while I think that's good on paper, sometimes what you run into is you get a lot of objections because they're concerned with the time commitment versus the 90-day. I'm sure typically works really well for you guys.
Hmm.
someone who's listening, they're like, man, I really want to model Dr. John. Obviously, you've got your program. Where's the best place for somebody to find you, get in touch with you, if they want to learn more about how they can work with somebody like yourself?
Sure. Our website is alphaomegaconsulting.com. So again, alphaomegaconsulting.com. Information about our program. And then there'll be some areas where you can actually get in touch and schedule a call to see how we can help you.
Perfect. That's
Mhm.
awesome. I will add that in the show notes as well. And if I remember right, too, just to kind of linger on the program, you've got one-on-ones, you've got group coaching, you've got an online course you offer. So different levels for different people who are looking for, depending on what they need in their journey.
True. Yeah. So I would say the majority of our clients in the past have done one-on-one coaching, but we did start group coaching about 1.5 to 2 years ago. And so we have those two levels. And then we also have just our online course available as a whole program or single modules. So some people just purchase that and be self-guided. But I'd say, yeah, individual coaching and group coaching kind of depends on what would fit you better at the moment. Some people do very well with group coaching, and we want to set the foundation of your business and that structure. Some people are a little bit more advanced in their career, so they actually need to dive right into the one-on-one coaching.
Beautiful. I'll link those out in the show notes for you guys, for the listeners. Um, Dr. John, I appreciate you being here. It's been valuable. There was a whole mess of the conversations, and I think we could dive down probably an hour in each of those, but I appreciate you bringing some wisdom to the table today and spend some time here on the Clinic Grow Secret show with us.
My pleasure, Jeff. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. All right, guys, if you guys got value, a quick reminder again, send it to family, friends, loved ones, colleagues who got value. Dr. John just shared a lot of different tactical stuff. So hit that share button. And as always, we'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.